As I say, the London Mayor Sadiq Khan has launched a campaign to challenge sexist attitudes and to urge men to take a stand against misogyny. He said primary school pupils who start school at 4 years old should be taught about misogyny as part of his campaign to implement change. Folks, I'm sure most of you agree that sexist attitudes and misogyny are wrong, but is this the right way to go about tackling the issue? Well, to speak more about this, I'm joined by Gareth Sturdy, a former teacher and education advisor, and Tony Breslin, who's the chair of governors at Bushy Primary Education and author of Lessons from Lockdown. There are a fair few of those we could learn, I think. Gareth, can we start with you, please? Where do you actually stand on this?
Well, I think that lessons on misogyny for primary school pupils aren't just a crazy idea. They're actually quite dangerous, because I think, you know, for both sexes, for boys, they give the idea that somehow ordinary playground attitudes, you know, sometimes calling people names, things like that, is actually due to a far worse thing inside them. Like there's a sort of monster inside them waiting to break out, you know, which is just not the case. But also, how must it be for young girls to be thinking, all the boys in my class, all the guys that I meet in the world are actually potential threats to me? I think that is not a way to empower young women, particularly at this really young age.
Yeah, Gareth, I couldn't agree more. Tony, how do you feel about this?
Mythology going on here. I'm chair of governors at an infant and a primary school, as you've said. I've worked in primary and secondary education throughout my career. I just simply don't find these cases. There may be one or two that make the headlines, but it's the responsibility of schools to offer a broad and balanced curriculum. It's also the responsibility of schools to ensure that children get key messages about what is right and what is wrong. Now, it's also the job of parents, but the truth is that not every child benefits from the same stability of family background. There are a whole range of things that actually schools level the playing field in for children. And I think we have much healthier attitudes towards girls, between boys and girls, towards people of colour, and so on today, as a result of quite a lot of the work that we would have called loony 20 years ago. The world is changing. We have to ensure that our young people are ready and resilient to attitudes. We've seen some of the awful cases in the last year, and all we're doing is ensuring that children have that. That's not about lessons in misogyny, but it's about making sure that through our curriculum and so forth, we cover a range of experiences and a range of values.
Well,
but
Tony,
the idea that...
Tony, did you have that when you were at school? Did you have lessons on misogyny?
No, I didn't.
So are you a misogynist?
No, I'm not. But I tell you what,
See, it's as simple as that, isn't it?
No, it's not. No, it's not. Let me finish, Darren. The fact of the matter is, I grew up in a world where girls got far fewer opportunities than boys as a result of their education. So we have changed things, and we are changing things. Of course, most children are not predisposed to these views in the home and elsewhere. But occasionally where they emerge, it's absolutely right that they should be challenged in the school. But we're not talking about a whole curriculum dominated by this. We're just talking about drawing out themes that, you know, a lot of primary school reading, etc., is fundamentally moral about right and wrong. So,
Gareth,
This is what the mayor tried to do when he was interviewed about the proposals. He tried to say, look, you know, this is just about people having respect for each other, people being nice to each other. But actually, if you go on the website, the Have a Word campaign, and you look at the kind of things they're saying, they're talking about, you know, correcting problematic attitudes. They're talking about how name-calling in the playground can lead to misogyny later in life, that we can be misogynistic without realizing, you know, all these things, identifying phrases like drama queen or boys will be boys as misogynistic. You know, when you look at what the mayor is trying to do, this is not simply teaching young people how to have respect for each other, which schools have always done. This is about a particular type of ideology And the mayor is very keen on grabbing them young. He said this when he launched the campaign. He said, to prevent cases later in life, we need to get them when they're young. That's not his exact words, but that's a close paraphrase.
Yeah, which I think it absolutely, and we're moving much too far away, if you ask me, from the basic principles of what kids should be taught, right? Kids are far too often, I think, leaving schools without being equipped with the actual tools to go out there and make something of their lives. And far too often, I think, on the streets of London especially, kids are going out and stabbing each other on the streets, right? Never mind talking about these things like misogyny. And I think fundamentally, Gareth, you raised a really important point, which is that far too many kids are now being taught that society is fundamentally stacked against them. You've got young women who are going to grow up believing that the world is just inherently misogynistic. I'm sorry, but this is palpable nonsense, isn't it, Gareth?
I mean, I think it's very, very dangerous. I think that the best way to empower women is to get them to make the most of their own abilities and think, whatever the world throws at me, I am going to be able to counter it. But telling them that the world is inherently dangerous, is going to try and enact violence against them in the kind of systematic way that the term misogyny implies, I just think that's very dangerous. And what's most concerning about this for me is that, we saw the reaction, for example, of London police to the Sarah Everard vigil, not to mention the case of Sarah Everard herself, right? That is a problem that the London mayor could tackle, but he doesn't know how to. So what does he do? He's essentially picking on primary school children. What on earth does he think he's doing?
Tony, how do we make sure that this is age appropriate? Because surely you would accept that starting with children as young as 4 is very young.
Look, we teach children from the moment they walk through a school gate or a nursery gate between right and wrong. And right and wrong takes many guises. And nobody is talking here about, I'm not answerable for what the London mayor may or may not have said. And I'm not proposing, the kind of scary scenario that Gareth talks about. I just don't see that. But what I do see is an education system today that is far more on it in terms of saying exactly what Gareth's been saying to girls, saying to children from different backgrounds, you can make it too. Now, to actually, in a sense, a part of that is to make those children aware at some level that sometimes they might have to work a little bit harder, that sometimes they might need a bit more resilience. That's not telling them that the girls, that every male hates them. I don't think anybody, including the mayor, is proposing that. I'm certainly not. But what I want to ensure is that every child that passes through our school feels they're of equal value, feels they can get on, and feels they're equipped to do
Tony,
so.
you mentioned resilience there, building in resilience to our kids. If that was what we were talking about right now, I would be stood shoulder to shoulder with you. I'd be saying, you know what, Tony, you bang on the money there. That's excellent. I hope all kids are being taught that. But that's not what's happening here. What kids are being told is that society is stacked against them, that we are all fundamentally misogynistic, and that these kids need to be brought up not to be because their parents are, their grandparents are, when actually that's just risible nonsense. And this is a woke screen from the Mayor of London.
Well, look, I'm saying that the scenario that you put out there is just not happening. I would agree with you in terms of if we were doing that kind of thing in schools, it wouldn't be right. But this is about ensuring that all of our children grow up with the belief that they can make it whatever position they're in. And it's our job as educators to ensure that's the case.
Brilliant,
if we
folks.
Look at the statistics.
Thank you. That's all we've got time for. Thank you very much for your time. That was Gareth Sturdy, former teacher and education advisor, and Tony Breslin, who is the chair of governors at Bushy Primary Education.